Hello cave dwellers. 1991 was a world before CD-ROMs were mainstream. Adventure games were a huge business, and one of the biggest creators of adventure games, Sierra, were looking for their next hit. Impressed by the works of Dynamix Games, founded by Jeff Tunnell and Damien Sly in 1984, Sierra purchased the company in August 1990, and the resources that Sierra offered opened the doors for Dynamix to create a trio of adventure games: Rise of the Dragon, Heart of China, and The Adventures of Willy Beamish. Today we're looking at my favourite of that trio, Heart of China, a romp through 1930s China as well as other locations, with an Indiana Jones or Romance in the Stone movie feel, squeezed into 7 5¼ inch floppy disks for the PC, and also available on the Amiga or Apple Macintosh. Let's fire up the retro station then and enjoy Dynamix Heart of China. Heart of China was released in 1991 for the Amiga, DOS and Macintosh. It was built on the Dynamix Game Development System, or DGDS. DGDS was created for and further developed in the making of Dynamix' first adventure, Rise of the Dragon, a Blade Runner-esque sci-fi adventure. Jeff Tunnell's goal with DGDS was twofold: to make the point-and-click interface for the player easy to navigate, and to make creating games easy for non-programmers, opening up the system for a more creative style of game creation than a traditional programming method. Kevin Ryan joined Dynamix as part owner shortly after it formed, and described the Dynamix game development system in an interview with AdventureClassicGaming.com, in which he says DGDS was set up to work over our LAN so that more than one person could be working on the game at the same time. It allowed non-programmers to set triggers on the screen to make events happen, create large conversation trees with all different responsives, set up animations, control branches in the story, or if necessary hook up custom written code for any particular section of the game. It turned out to be an incredibly flexible system, and went on even to be used for an educational science game, which was named Quarky and Quazu's Turbo Science, aimed at 9 to 14-year-olds. Anyway, back to Heart of China. This rapid and creative development weaved its cinematic story in which you starred as pilot Jake Lucky Masters, with original works of art by 9 artists, led by lead production artist D. Brent Burkett, who was resident with Dynamix from 1990 to 1994. You can find more of his work at dbrentburkett.com. Here we are early in the game, exploring the docks, where you can see the artwork interspersed with animated touches and interactive hotspots. As we enter the town then, a pamphlet floats to the ground, and it could be easily missed at first glance, but the changing cursor helps us to identify it, and then we can click and drag it into our inventory. Hunting the screen for hotspots in this game is fairly infrequent compared to the earlier Sierra games, but it does happen sometimes. Once the art was digitised and compressed for the Amiga, Mac or PC's palette in resolution, real actors were recorded and overlaid to create an action like the barman here. Despite Sierra's backing, the budget didn't extend to an all-star cast, and many characters were actually played by staff and their families. Remember Dynamix owner Kevin Ryan? Well, here he is playing the immigration official in the game. Using staff as actors was a practice Dynamix could get away with limited animation, but developers would soon discover it wasn't a good practice when the capacity of CD-ROMs allowed video, and the age of terrible video acting would soon begin in the CD-ROM era. Speaking of those CD games, the term interactive movie had floated around in the games world for some time, but never evolved further than limited gameplay of laserdiscs like Dragon's Lair or Space Ace. But Heart of China came as close as I think a floppy disk based game could be to just that. The goal of the game is to rescue Kate Lomax, daughter of a wealthy businessman who threatens Lucky's way of life if he doesn't find her, and offers a reward if he does, which diminishes by $20,000 a day, so it's in your interests to find her as quickly as possible. The game can be completed in a number of ways, with junction points highlighted along the way at times when a different branch could have been taken. Here we need to break into Li Deng's castle in which Kate is held. We've chosen to enter under the guise of a peasant bringing a cow to the feast, but an alternative method was to break in via the sewers. The many junction points and different endings add a lot of replay value to the game. A few situations can be frustrating when you see the same death scene for the umpteenth time, but on the whole it's an enjoyable experience as you discover all the different routes through the game, and it never feels like it's on rails. An interesting addition to the game is the action sequences. These can be skipped or played, and skipped if you're unable to complete them, and they offer quite a shift in the gameplay which you may or may not enjoy. The first is a 3D tank segment in which you must drive a tank while pursued by enemy tanks, shooting those in your way and navigating the terrain. The action is immediately familiar to players of other Dynamics games, using the 3D engine created by Damon Sly, who also created A10 Tank Killer, Red Baron and Aces of the Pacific. The second sequence being an action fighting minigame reminiscent of Sid Meier's Pirates with a dash of North 3 South. I found this one less enjoyable than the tank scene. A little more action comes in the use of the pistol, which you can arm Lucky with and hold down the right mouse button to bring up the sights and shoot. But its use is really limited to 1 or 2 scenes, for example shooting the head off this snake to save Kate, who then gets bitten by the other, and so begins the journey to Nepal with our ninja friend to find her the antidote. While the interface does a good job of keeping the game uncluttered, unlike say Indiana Jones here by LucasArts, where a large portion of the SCUM system takes up the screen, it can be clunky at times. To arm Lucky with a gun, I first have to examine an item before I can even get to the character view, and then I can drag the gun onto him, which seems a little convoluted, especially when you're in a situation where you need to arm yourself. Puzzles are mainly reliant on dialogue for clues, with a handful of inventory puzzles, or simply giving the right object to the right person. Minor annoyances aside, our adventure continues from China into the mountains, deserts, palaces and bazaars, by rickshaw, by plane, by camel and by train, leading us to one of several conclusions depending on the path you take, and perhaps like me, leaving you wanting to give it another go and see where those other junction points in the plot take you. The attention to detail extends to the box and contents as well. You have the usual warranty cards, but interestingly you have this slip to exchange the discs for a 16 colour version in case it doesn't run quickly enough on your machine in 256 colours. In the box we have the familiar Sierra box, and then inside we have the control documentation, which is fairly detailed. It covers all versions, the Amiga, PC and Mac, and towards the back it's a guide to get you through the first few scenes. But my favourite part is the travel guide here. This is typical of a game of the early 90s or late 80s, and it helps to immerse you in the game, featuring biographies of characters and location notes for the places you'll visit. The sturdy paper that it's printed on means most copies should hold up well, and will make a nice addition to anyone's collection. And then there's this gorgeous finishing touch on the front cover, the embossed art featuring Lucky, which just catches the light beautifully. At the time of release, the game received a great to good welcome, with scores across all platforms ranging from the 80 to the 90%. But playing through it again, I think it stands the test of time well. And this often forgotten gem shows that it's worth exploring a little further sometimes into the Sierra catalogue for adventure games that don't end with the word quest. I'd recommend you give this one a try, but if possible keep it to a smaller screen such as a 14 or 15 inch monitor so as not to stretch that digitised artwork too much and lose the effect. Dynamics followed this game up with Willy Beamish, which combined the DGDS engine with Disney animators to create an animated adventure very different to Heart of China, before then concentrating their efforts on 3D flight sims very successfully. And so while you may remember them for Red Baron or A10 Tank Killer, their foray into adventure gaming should be remembered as one which took an original approach in a saturated genre, which stood out as a highly polished artistic endeavour, and proved that the feel of a truly interactive movie was entirely possible within the limitations of the space of a floppy disk, before the seemingly limitless capacity of CD-ROM brought us some shockingly bad attempts. Heart of China is definitely one to stay in the retro man cave. If you've enjoyed revisiting this classic, then why not share your memories with me in the comments section, like and subscribe to my channel, and come back again for more similar reviews. Thanks for watching, Cave Dwellers.